In the fall, we had planned a Scamp camping trip for Patrick's birthday weekend. We were going to take the Scamp on Friday and go over to the Clarksboro KOA, which is on the New Jersey side, but not too far outside of Philadelphia. Our plan was to go into Philadelphia on Saturday to see a Van Gogh exhibit. What ended up happening was by the time we got home from work on Friday, it was already dark thanks to daylight savings, and we were both pretty exhausted. We still had to finish packing the Scamp and getting ready, so we ended up canceling our Friday night and just going on Saturday morning, which turned this into a rather hectic and not so relaxing weekend, but we did have a nice spot at the KOA.
So don't let the weight of the world slow you down, and if you search for the meaning of life, it won't be found. So take your insecurities and leave them all behind. Let's learn to make the most of our time.
We got into our spot. It is starting to rain and it's pretty chilly, so it's the perfect day to test out the new heater. There it is. We're at a full hookup site, so sometimes we would use a little electric heater, but since we really haven't gotten to play with this yet, we want to see how good it is at heating up the Scamp and how quick it works. Good, that light, yeah.
You have to hold it for a little while.
A couple months earlier, our furnace stopped working, and when we took a look at it, we found out that it was covered in rust, so we ended up taking it out, and we decided to try this OLYMPIA wave instead. Now we know your propane quick connect. Ooh, there we go. It worked. Oh, and then you just see like a little sparkle on the mat. Huh, neat. I can feel the heat coming off of it already. Yeah. That's pretty nice. Alright, I guess we can close the door and see how quick it heats up. The weather must have known that we wanted to test our heater, because as soon as we got there, it started to rain. It was very damp and cold and windy. We also found out that our refrigerator wouldn't turn on, and since the weather was so unpleasant, neither one of us felt inclined to go outside and try to troubleshoot that, so we just decided to make do without the fridge, but that was okay because it was cold. The other thing I added recently were these fruit hammocks, and this is just the never-ending process of trying to get more organization into a small camper. One of the things that I'm always fighting with is keeping things off of the flat surfaces so that you actually have a little bit of room to work. We had just enough time to get settled in the camper and have something to eat before we had to do the not very relaxing drive into Philadelphia on a Saturday. I'm not quite sure what I was thinking when I booked this trip, because it was a very difficult drive. But we made it into the Van Gogh exhibit, and this was an interesting experience. I've never been to something quite like this. There are a few smaller rooms that give you information about Van Gogh's life and his works, and then you go into the main room where they have some of his artwork projected all the way around in 360 degrees, and it's constantly changing and it's set to music. So this is something that I would love to see done with other artists' work, because it's a more interesting experience for people who don't just like to go to a museum and walk around and look at pictures hanging on the wall. This is such a nice way to learn about artists and learn about art history and the struggles that those artists went through in a way that feels a lot more dynamic and just all-encompassing. We sat on the floor on some beanbags and just absorbed the interesting show. The whole thing lasts about 25 minutes and then it repeats on a loop, and we actually stayed to watch it twice because every time you see the show, you're going to notice something different. You can look in a different direction and notice some other element of the experience. The real reason that I booked this for Patrick's birthday was because they have a VR experience, which you pay a little bit extra for, but at the end you get to go into a separate room and put a VR headset on, and you do this little tour that tells you about Van Gogh's life and his works. One of my favorite things about having the Scamp is that when it's cold and rainy like this, I get to make coffee and cook breakfast inside. But that doesn't do good things for the condensation. As soon as it gets cold and we're running the heater, there's definitely condensation. Usually I show our bed all nice and neatly made, but this is what happens when I just throw everything on the bed so we can leave. We have to check out by 11. It's about almost 10:30 right now. So Pat's dumping the tanks because it was nice we had a full hookup site. We got to test out the Olympian, and I feel like it did pretty well, especially considering that we didn't take out any of our Reflectex for the windows yet. Next trip, we have a trip in December that we're going to do to Alair State Park. So that'll really be a better gauge. I feel like it didn't get super hot in here, and we had it on pretty high, but we also had the vent open because we weren't sure how it was going to do. So we had the vent open, so we lost a lot of heat through our windows and through the vent. But yeah, nice park overall, and it's open year-round, which we thought was really interesting and unusual for this area. Most parks close either the end of October or definitely by like the middle of December. The New Jersey state parks close. Since we couldn't get ourselves together on Friday to get here for the first night, this ended up being a very short and hectic trip. We were here for just about 24 hours, had enough time to set up the Scamp, run into Philly, run back, wake up the next day, pack everything up, and head home. So very quick. This is where we learned that it's actually better to book Saturday night and Sunday night. Even if we can't stay Sunday, it just gives us that little extra room to relax. We made it back to the tiny house, so that means weekend chores are going to start now. But first thing, I'm going to start a fire. We started keeping our wood inside in this little bin, and that's been really helpful. We have our fat wood in the bag, and then we kind of pile up enough wood for definitely one night, so we don't have to keep going in and out, which is nice. I packed the wood stove, so let's see if we can get this started and warm it up in here. It's like in the low 40s today, kind of damp. Definitely good day for a fire. While I got the wood stove going, Patrick started one of our least favorite chores, which is winterizing the Scamp. Not because it's hard, just because it means that camping season is coming toward an end. We still use our camper after it's winterized for as long as we can, but the New Jersey parks close usually by the end of October or the second week in December. This was just starting our second season with the wood stove, and it is definitely one of our favorite things in the tiny house. Once that gets up to temperature, then I'm gonna put probably a spaghetti squash in the oven up there because, oh, you can already see the smoke going out. There's our smoke as it just started. That was pretty quick. That's neat. But yeah, I'll start my Sunday cooking to get ready for the week, and it's nice. I just love the fact that we can use the wood stove to heat the house and to cook stuff at the same time. It's just very efficient. Today is November 14th, and I don't think we've ever waited this long to winterize. We were kind of pushing it. It's gotten down to about 34 a couple times, which made me nervous, but we've been lucky, especially because we had a full hookup site this weekend. We wanted to be able to use the water because it's nice. But we're going to switch some things around so we can do our winter setup, so we can still use the Scamp even without, using the sink and the toilet and all that stuff.
justice, the next president to be. The news and what you hear, your career. It's time for you to face those fears, and it's all fair to be aware, and I'll be there. So don't be scared. Just take a deep breath of air. And 1, 2, 3 to 10, you begin to focus again. And though time flies, we'll have enough to realize this bigger than the both of us.